Carl Jung unearthed something profoundly unsettling about why certain individuals trigger discomfort in others, even when they've done absolutely nothing wrong. He called it shadow projection, and what he mapped out a century ago explains why you might have been hated, rejected, or shunned without ever truly understanding why. Neuroscience, as recently as 2024, has confirmed that the human brain processes different types of fear in distinct regions, and the fear you evoke in some people is of a very specific kind, a kind they often can't even articulate to themselves. Have you ever walked into a room and sensed that someone instantly disliked you before you even spoke a word, before you did anything at all, simply by existing? Have you had the experience of people shying away from you for no apparent reason, or worse, being subtly hostile in ways you could never quite put your finger on? If this sounds familiar, you're not imagining things. It's not paranoia. Carl Jung meticulously mapped out exactly why this happens, and once you grasp the underlying mechanism, you'll never again be baffled by these reactions. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal what's really happening when normal people experience fear in your presence. I'll show you the connection between the Jungian shadow and the threat circuits in the brain, and I'm going to give you something no one else offers: a complete understanding of why your mere presence unsettles certain people, and what that reveals about both you and them. But before we go any further, I need you to understand the core concept behind all of this: the shadow. Carl Jung defined the shadow as an unconscious aspect of the personality that doesn't align with the ego's ideal self. It's everything you've repressed, all the desires, ideas, instincts, weaknesses, and tendencies that you were taught to hide, everything you learned was unacceptable, everything you swept under the psychological rug. The problem is, the shadow doesn't just vanish. Because you ignore it, it remains alive, active, influencing your reactions in ways you don't even realize. And here's where things get interesting. When you encounter someone who openly expresses what you've repressed, your unconscious goes on high alert, not because that person is doing something wrong, but because they are showcasing something you're afraid to see in yourself. Carl Jung wrote about this directly. He stated that when we see someone who isn't afraid to face what we repress, we become very disturbed. On the surface, you disapprove. You think, I can't believe this person is doing that. I can't believe they're talking like that. But secretly, your shadow is envious, and behind that envy lies fear. This fear is what neuroscience can now measure. A 2024 study published in the Journal of Neuroscience used MRI technology to observe brain activity when people were confronted with different types of fear: fear of heights, fear of spiders, and fear of social threats, like public speaking and confrontations. What they discovered ran contrary to prevailing scientific wisdom. The neural response to each type of scenario activated different areas of the brain. There wasn't a single unified pattern. Social fear activated different regions than the fear of predators, for example. And here's the crucial part. The fear you awaken in people who reject you without reason is processed as a social threat, but not just any social threat, a threat to the very concept the person has of themselves, a threat to their constructed identity. When you are authentic, when you express parts of yourself that most people have suppressed, you become an unwilling mirror. You show people what they could be if they weren't afraid, and that is unbearable for their ego. Dr. Kay Tai, in her episode with Andrew Huberman in February of 2024, explained something fascinating about the amygdala. The amygdala isn't just the fear center, as previously thought. It's responsible for determining the importance of stimuli and selecting appropriate responses. It prioritizes survival by evaluating safety and assigning valence to potential threats. And here's the key point. The amygdala doesn't really distinguish between physical threats and threats to the ego. To the primitive brain, anything that threatens your position in the group, your identity, your worldview, is a potential threat to survival. So it's when you show up, being authentic, expressing things others suppress, living in ways others are afraid to live. Their brain registers threat, not physical threat, existential threat. And that threat generates fear, and the fear generates hostility. Carl Jung called this projection. It's a classic defense mechanism. Instead of looking inward and confronting their own shadow, the person projects that shadow onto you. They see in you what they can't accept in themselves. And by rejecting you, they symbolically reject that repressed part. But hold on, because here's where most people stop understanding. Projection can involve both negative and positive aspects. There's what Carl Jung called the golden shadow. These are the positive qualities you've also repressed. Your creativity, your strength, your capacity to be free, your unrealized potential. So often, what people project onto you isn't something bad, and it's something good. They're afraid to express. And upon seeing you expressing that good thing, they feel a mixture of envy and resentment that manifests as inexplicable aversion. Think about it. Have you noticed how the most critical people are often the ones who never take risks? How the people who judge you most for being different are the ones most bound by convention? How the people who attack you most for being yourself are the ones who least know themselves? That's no coincidence. It's pure projection. Carl Jung wrote that those who uncover our shadow are activating our subconscious, showing us that we're afraid to see something in ourselves. And then we unjustly become very aggressive with the person onto whom we're projecting at that moment. You understand the implication. The hostility you receive isn't about you, it's about them. It's about what you represent to their unconscious. It's about the mirror you unwittingly hold up to their shadow. But that doesn't mean you should ignore these reactions. On the contrary, understanding them can give you a huge advantage. Neuroscience shows that subordinates in social hierarchies pay more attention to dominance. Dr. Tai suggests that this indicates an increased amygdala response in subordinate individuals due to heightened attention toward those above them in the hierarchy. Now think about that in a different way. You don't need to be hierarchically superior to be perceived as dominant. You can be perceived as dominant simply by being more free, more authentic, more integrated. And when you're perceived that way, people who haven't integrated their own shadow self will see you as a threat. They'll pay more attention to you. They'll have more intense amygdala responses. They'll feel fear and transform that fear into hostility or withdrawal. This explains why you can walk into a room without doing anything and sense that certain people immediately dislike you. Your body, your energy, your way of being in the world communicates something that their unconscious recognizes as a threat. And ironically, the more you work on yourself, the more you integrate your own shadow, the more authentic you become, the stronger this effect becomes. Because you are emanating more and more what most people are afraid to be. So what do you do with this information? First, you stop blaming yourself. If people reject you for no reason, if they feel discomfort in your presence, if they are hostile in ways you don't understand, it isn't necessarily about something you did wrong. It might be about what you represent to their unconscious. Second, you use this as a filter. The people who fear you for no reason probably haven't integrated their own shadow. They're projecting. And relationships based on shadow projection never really work. You can save yourself a lot of time and energy by recognizing this early on. Third, you become conscious of your own projections. Because you do it too. Everyone does. The people who inexplicably irritate you are probably showing you something from your own shadow. Authenticity, as Carl Jung said, is the antidote to shadow projection. When you are authentic, you are willing to risk being seen as you really are, shadow and all. And you also become more capable of seeing others as they really are. Fourth, you understand that the fear you awaken can transform. The same people who initially reject you may eventually be drawn to you because deep down, They know you have something they want. The freedom to be yourself. Neuroscience confirms that the brain has two systems for processing fear. One system involves primarily cortical areas and generates conscious feelings. The other involves primarily subcortical regions like the amygdala and operates largely unconsciously. As Andrew Huberman often points out, these systems can work independently, leading to reactions we don't fully understand. This means that the initial reaction of fear you awaken is often unconscious. The person doesn't know why they dislike you, they just feel it. And then the rational brain creates justifications. They invent reasons for disliking you that make logical sense, but that aren't the real cause. Carl Jung saw this happen countless times. People who hated others for no apparent reason. And when he investigated, he discovered that the object of the hatred represented exactly what the person had repressed in themselves. So, when someone attacks you for being too intense, it's probably because they repressed their own intensity. When they criticize you for being different, it's because they're afraid of their own difference. When they reject you for not following the rules, it's because they're trapped by the rule and secretly resent it. You become a living reminder of what they could be, and that reminder is unbearable. But here's the final paradox that Carl Jung discovered. The only way to stop awakening this fear in others would be to stop being yourself, to repress your authenticity, to cast your own light into the shadow, and that would be a price too high to pay. Carl Jung said that if we don't do the work of integrating our shadow, we project the shadow onto others. This can lead to hysteria, scapegoating, and violence against others or against ourselves. Furthermore, when we ignore our shadow energies, we diminish ourselves and live unconscious and timid lives. The choice is clear. You can dim your light so as not to bother others, or you can shine completely and accept that some people will feel fear of you. The second option is the only one. That leads to a fulfilling life. And here's the good news. It's not all people who will react this way. People who have done their own shadow work, who have integrated their repressed parts, who are authentic themselves. These people will not feel fear of you. They will feel affinity, recognition, respect. Because authenticity recognizes authenticity. Integration recognizes integration. And when two people who have done the work meet, something magical happens. There is no shadow projection. There is real connection. So, the fear you awaken in others functions as a filter. It pushes away the people who are still asleep, and it attracts the people who are waking up or have already awakened. This isn't a curse, it's a gift. An inconvenient gift sometimes, but a gift. The next time someone rejects you for no apparent reason, instead of asking yourself, "What did I do wrong?" ask yourself, "What am I showing them that they are afraid to see in themselves?" The answer will reveal more about them than about you. And remember, their shadow is not your problem to solve. You can't integrate another person's shadow. Only they can do that. What you can do is continue being yourself. Continue shining. Continue bothering those who need to be bothered. Because in the end, the world needs more authentic people. Even if authenticity scares, even if authenticity bothers, even if authenticity makes normal people feel fear without knowing why. If you've made it this far, if you felt that these words explained something that you've always felt, but never been able to name, I want to make you a request. YouTube has that golden heart below the video, the super thanks. When you click on it, you're saying, "I get it. I am one of those people who bothers others without doing anything, and I am at peace with it." Each super thanks is a declaration that you have chosen authenticity, even knowing that it comes with a price. And that is exactly what Carl Jung would call psychological courage, the courage to be yourself, in a world that constantly pressures you to be something else. Now I have a question for you, and I really want you to answer in the comments. Carl Jung said that we become unfairly aggressive with people who show us what we are afraid to see in ourselves. Tell a story, a time that someone rejected you or was hostile to you for no apparent reason. What do you think you were showing them that they were afraid to see in themselves? Write your story here. It can be short. It can be long. But be honest. Because when you tell your story, other people who have been through the same thing will read it and finally understand. Finally know that they aren't crazy, that they aren't imagining things, that the fear they awaken in others is real and has an explanation. And in that moment of recognition, something changes. The shadow becomes a little lighter. The shadow projection loses a little power. And with that, authenticity gains a little more space in the world. This is what Carl Jung wanted. This is what depth psychology promises. Not the elimination of suffering, but the transformation of it into consciousness and into understanding, into freedom. You don't need to be loved by everyone. You need to be yourself. And if that scares some people, so be it. They're going to have to deal with their own shadows sooner or later. You're just advancing the process, kicking things into high gear,